This year's Belmont Stakes is anything but ordinary. It's not just the Belmont, it's the Belmont at Saratoga, and that changes everything. In this video, I'm going to give you 7 key angles that you can use to help find your winner. And we're not just going back to the Belmont to find those angles. Oh no, we're going to look at the Travers. This is not a 1.5 miles at the Belmont. It is a 1.25 miles at Saratoga, and that sure sounds like Travers to me. Facts and figures are going to give you the winning edge. I give you the stats, you make the picks. Hi, it's Maura from Trifecta and a little bit extra. And in this video, we're talking everything angles, all the insights, all the past trends, all the metrics to help you find your standout contender. And we're not only going to go through the angles, we're going to see how did they do last year because the Belmont was at Saratoga last year, and what do the contenders that we know today, what do they look like according to these angles? Now, I get it, the Travers, it's at the end of the summer. These are 3-year-olds. They can progress by leaps and bounds even in a month. But I promise you, there are key angles that you can use here to help you find your winner. Now, this may be a different setting, but it is the same prestige. So let's see what it takes to win and conquer the Belmont Stakes. Let's get started with Saratoga's nickname, and that is the Graveyard of Champions. Now, why would I want to start here? Well, if you didn't know this already, this is the track where heavily favored horses, they get beat. Let's look at 2 examples. One is Secretariat. Fastest Derby ever, fastest Preakness ever, fastest Belmont ever. Wins the Triple Crown, comes here to the Whitney, and gets beat by a horse named Onion. Now, I cannot make that one up. Another example is American Pharoah. In 2015, wins the Triple Crown, comes here for the Travers, and loses to Keen Ice. Now, what makes Saratoga so difficult? One is track bias. On one day, the rail can be golden. Next day, like quicksand. Now, we're not going to know right now if there's any track bias on Belmont Day, but if I were you, I'd be watching to see what happens on the Friday before the Belmont and on the undercard. The next thing is Saratoga's unique track configuration. And with that, we're going to angle number 1, and that is post positions. Let's look back at the Travers history and see, did post positions hurt or help any of the horse's chances? Now, I look back at 35 years of the running of the Travers, and here's what I found. Post positions 4 through 7, they are golden. 22 out of the last 35 winners came from post positions 4 through 7. That is a whopping 63%. And key horses that were in those gates were Street Sense, Tis the Law, Epicenter, and Keen Ice, the horse that beat American Pharoah. Now let's look at post position 1. 2 horses, only 2 horses have ever won the Travers coming out of post position 1. And that tells you you have to have a very clean break and a lot of speed. One of the horses was Arrogate, 2016. Gate to wire, fastest Travers ever. The second was Holy Bull. Now let's look at post positions 8 through 10. Only 4 winners. Now, not all of the last 35 runnings have had at least 8 to 10 horses in it, but still shows extremely difficult. And the reason is the way Saratoga's track configuration is set up and where the starting gate is. If you're going to be playing Saratoga later this summer, I do want to warn you, those longer distance races on the main track, well, the 1 1/8 miles, when you start, you're almost right into that first turn. So post positions far outside, they could get hung wide. Now, 1.25 miles, you do have a lead up to that first turn, but it's still very challenging. Fierceness did win the Travers last year coming from post position 8, so it can be done, just a bit challenging. Now I want to look at last year's Belmont at Saratoga. Last year's winner was Dornoch, and drum roll please, Post position 6, Golden Spot. Mind Frame, who was the buzz horse last year, was post position 10, and you may have downgraded him if you knew this angle. And Seize the Gray, our Preakness winner, well, he was post position 1, the dreaded 1. We don't know post positions yet for this year's Belmont, so come back, find my video on Belmont Week where I'm going to go contender by contender, and I will include that in the evaluation. The second angle is pace and trip. And in this race, being forwardly placed is everything. Deep closers, they tend to struggle. And if you get out of the gate slow or you just have a bad trip, very difficult to recover. I looked at the last 35 runnings and 22 cases, again, a whopping 63%. The winner was within 2 lengths of the leader at the half pole. Only 3 went gate to wire though. Corporate Report in 1991, Arrogate in 2016, and West Coast in 2017. Does that mean a deep closer can't win? Absolutely not. There were 9 horses that were more than 4 lengths from the leader at the half pole. And those horses, they didn't absolutely need a hot pace to run into. 5 had it, but 4 didn't. And those 4 would be Keen Ice, who won against American Pharoah, Unshaded, Will Take Charge, and Birdstone. Now let's look at last year's Belmont at Saratoga and see how did our horses stack up. I'm showing you where they were actually in the Belmont at Saratoga race, but also what did we know from their prior races, because that's what we would have had on hand to evaluate their past performances. Our winner, Dornoch, has always been forwardly placed. In his races prior to the Belmont, he was either the leader or within 2 lengths. And in the race itself, he was only a half a length behind the leader at the half pole. You would have also upgraded Mind Frame and several others. Let's look at who we believe are in this year's Belmont and see where are they at the half pole in their past performances. And we're going to start with Grande and Rodriguez because we know they're going to want to be forwardly placed. Rodriguez, he went gate to wire in the Wood Memorial. In the San Felipe, he was only a half a length behind the leader at the half pole. And in the Robert B. Lewis, it's a length and a half. Now let's look at Grande. Grande was in the Wood Memorial against Rodriguez and was only a length and 3/4 behind Rodriguez at the half pole. And his 2 other prior races, he was a half a length behind the leader. Now I want to talk about Baeza because Baeza's running style is typically forwardly placed, and what we saw in the Derby was not indicative of his typical running style. He got into some trouble, and at the half pole he was 11.5 lengths behind the leader and somehow managed to come in 3rd. Prior to that race, including the Santa Anita Derby, he was typically a half length to 2 lengths off of the leader. Now let's look at Journalism, our Kentucky Derby runner-up and Preakness winner, and in both of those races, again, not indicative of the running style that we saw in his prior races, and that could all be due to the traffic and the problems that he had in both of those races. In the Kentucky Derby, he was more than 8 lengths off of the leader at the half pole. Remember, he bumped a foe coming out of the gate. He got stacked up behind Citizen Bull when Citizen Bull came over. Again, lots of trouble. In the Preakness, he was 5 lengths off the leader at the half pole. If he gets back to his other running style, but again, those were small field sizes, you should expect to see about a length to a length and a quarter. The horses that stand out of having to make up some ground and may struggle unless they're more forwardly placed than what we've seen in the past are Sovereignty, our Kentucky Derby winner, Hill Road, and Heart of Honor. Before we go to the next angle, if you're finding this information useful, hit like and hit subscribe. Don't miss out on my next Belmont video. We're gonna go contender by contender, and it doesn't end there. I'll be doing 1 race a week for Saratoga, and then we will start the Derby preps all over again. The third angle is late pace. You have to have something left in the tank to win a race like this. In fact, 21 out of the last 35 winners of the Travers say things like driving or rallying, indicating late pace is key. Now, Saratoga, long distance races, they could be won by inches. In fact, 19 out of the last 35 winnings of the Travers, 19, that's a little bit more than half, were won by less than a length. Less than a length. 6 by a nose, 5 by a neck, and 2 by a head. That's incredible. So pick a horse that is determined to win and a jockey that can get to the wire first. So what did this look like in last year's Belmont at Saratoga? Well, only 2 horses had notes that said that they were finishing well, and that is Dornoch and Anna Marie. What about our horses for this year? Best late paces are coming from Sovereignty, Hill Road, and Journalism. Now, Sovereignty and Hill Road, they may struggle if they're not more forwardly placed. So Journalism may have the advantage if Grande and Rodriguez don't get too far in front of him. The 4th angle is Saratoga Experience. Given the uniqueness of this track, having experience at Saratoga can give you the upper hand. If we look back at last year's Belmont at Saratoga, 3 horses had Saratoga Experience. Dornoch, who came in second in his race, Protective, also a second in his Saratoga race, and the Wine Steward, who won the Funny Side Stakes. This year, in the projected field, we only have 1 horse with Saratoga Experience, and that would be Sovereignty. How did he do? Well, it was his very first race. 6 furlongs. Came out of post position 10. Not a great post position for Saratoga. Had to go really wide, but was able to finish 4th. The 5th angle is stamina and the ability to go the longer distance. We know if you're going these longer distances, you have to have the pedigree and the foundation to help you get across the finish line first. Here we're going to look at pedigree and also who has run at least 1.125 miles and finished 1st or 2nd in those races. Let's start with pedigree. For pedigree, we could go back to the dosage index to see who's got a pedigree that leans towards stamina. Now, if you don't know about the dosage index, see my video here. I get it's a Kentucky Derby video, but it will give you all you need to know on the dosage index. Dosage, we typically want to see a score of 4 or less. That's indicative of stamina. If we look back to last year's Belmont at Saratoga, we see that all the horses had a dosage of 4 or less, except for Seize the Gray and Mindframe. Let's start with Seize the Gray. Seize the Gray was by Arrogate. Now, Arrogate set the fastest Travers ever going gate to wire in 2016, so you may want to discount that dosage metric. Also, Mindframe was just slightly above the 4 at 4.33. And American Pharoah had a 4.33, and you know who else had a 4.33 dosage index? Our Kentucky Derby winner this year, Sovereignty. So always take these metrics in stride. Let's look at our projected field for this year, and what we see, everybody is under the 4 except for Sovereignty, but we know he could go the distance because he just won the Kentucky Derby. Now, what may be a better angle than pedigree is foundation. And what I mean by that is running in 1.125 miles race or longer and winning or coming in second in that race. Now, take it for what it is because the Travers is later in the summer and those horses would have had more time to build up that foundation. But the winners of the Travers tend to have 3 to 4 races at 1.125 miles or longer distance and came in 1st or 2nd. There were only 2 horses, only 2, that had never run at least 1.125 miles and won the Travers. One is that phenom we've been talking about, Arrogate in 2016. The other was the only dead heat I can find, 2012, and the winner's name was Golden Ticket. So how well did this angle do last year at Belmont at Saratoga? Well, there were two horses that didn't meet this angle. Mindframe, he never had run at least 1.1 miles. And Protective had run 1.1 miles, but finished third. How about this year? All of the projected field have run at least 1.1 miles, so they have the foundation. But what I'm going to show you here is how many races they've run at the longer distance and how well did they do. So you decide what you want to upgrade. Do you want to upgrade those that have run 1.25 miles, so the Derby horses, Journalism, Sovereignty, or Baeza? Or do you want to upgrade those that have built a deeper foundation with the number of races they've run at the longer distance? The sixth angle is prior last race. Let's talk about the length of time between the horses' prior race and the Belmont. And of course, for this, we're going to the Belmont statistics. We want to know, can Journalism come back from the Preakness? Can Grande and Rodriguez come back from their long layoff? We haven't seen them since April 5th when they both ran in the Wood Memorial. Let's start with that one. I looked at 29 runnings of the Belmont. I went back, all the way back to 1995, and I did not include 2020 when everything was upside down. And in those 29 runnings, only six races had an entry where a horse had not run in May, so had a longer layoff. And of those six, none were winners. None. The best was Forte in 2023. Forte came in second to Arcangelo. Now, Forte may remind us of Grande, both owned by Rapoli Stables, both trained by Todd Pletcher, both scratched from the Derby. But Forte, much stronger resume than Grande. Grande only has 3 starts and 1 graded stakes in the Wood Memorial. Forte had 6 graded stakes entries and 5 wins in those graded stakes entries. He won the Hopeful. He won the Claiborne's Breeders' Futurity. He won the Breeders' Cup Juvenile. He won the Fountain of Youth, and he won the Florida Derby. Rodriguez has a stronger resume than Grande. Not only was he in the Wood Memorial and won that race, he was in the G3 Robert B. Lewis, came in second, and the G2 San Felipe came in third. Now, he had to be scratched from the Derby due to a foot bruise. He's only had 2 workouts since then. He's gone 4 furlongs for 49, but 7 furlongs for 1 minute and 24 seconds, and that is super fast. That may be indicative of really good form. Now let's talk who's got the better prep race, Kentucky Derby and Oaks, Preakness, or Peter Pan. Out of the last 29 runnings of the Belmont, 14 of the winners, 48%, were won 35 to 36 days prior to the Belmont. And that majority is coming from the Kentucky Derby. One of the winners was from the Kentucky Oaks. That was Rags to Riches, and she won in 2007. The other is coming from the Federico Tezio Stakes, and that winner was in 2011, Ruler on Ice. 10 winners came from the Preakness or Preakness Undercard, 34%. But what I want you to know, outside of our 2 Triple Crown winners, American Pharoah in 2015 and Justify in 2018, you have to go all the way back to 2008 to find that winner, and it wasn't the Preakness, it was on the undercard. Datara won the Barbaro Stakes on the Preakness undercard. Now, 5 winners came out of the Peter Pan. The Peter Pan is typically run at Belmont 28 days before the Belmont Stakes. There was one instance, it was only 13 days, and that was in 1999. Let's look at how well this angle did last year at Belmont at Saratoga, and let's upgrade the Kentucky Derby or undercard. We have Dornoch, we have Mindframe, who was on the undercard, Sierra Leone, Honor Marie, and Resilience. This year, it would be Sovereignty and Baeza based on the projected field. The 7th and final angle is Jockeys. Jockeys that know Saratoga do well at Saratoga. Those that know how to judge pace and position and place their horses well, they tend to get across the finish line first. So if we're going to look at last year's Belmont at Saratoga, let's use what we would have had on hand, and that would have been the 2023 summer standings. Now, I looked at who were in the top 10 and who ran in last year's Belmont at Saratoga, and the top 10 jockeys included Luis Saez, Irad Ortiz, Flavian Pratt, Tyler Gaffleone, and Manny Franco. Now let's look at this year's projected field, and we'll use the 2024 standings in terms of top 10 jockeys. Now we don't know all the jockeys yet, but what we do know is we've got Flavian Pratt on Baeza, he's in the top 10. Dylan Davis on Grande, he's in the top 10. And Junior Alvarado on Sovereignty, he's in the top 10. We have the angles. How well would this have done in last year's Belmont at Saratoga? Well, lo and behold, Dornoch clicks off every angle. I mean, he had the post position, the right running style, the foundation coming out of the Kentucky Derby, and Luis Saez. Did I fit these angles to him? Absolutely not. I didn't even use this last year. I didn't even have Dornoch. And if you don't believe me, I was on YouTube last year. Go back and watch that video. Now, I will warn you, it was one of my first ones and isn't very good, but it will prove I was only looking at horses that I thought I could win, and Dornoch, not on there. Now, Mindframe was the buzz horse last year, but clearly lacked the foundation and didn't have a great post position. Is this methodology resilient? Nope. Look at resilience. You may have upgraded him. Right running style, good foundation, but came in last. And that's why I always say, go horse by horse, know the horse, know what all the past performances are, and use these angles with that information to find your winner. And that video I'm reminding you is coming out next week. So hit subscribe, hit like, and don't miss that video. Now let's look at our projected field and how they do with these angles all put together. The one thing I don't know right now is post positions. So we will evaluate those in the video that comes out on Belmont Week. Let's start with journalism. Journalism, if he's more forwardly placed like he was in those prior races, could have a shot here. Now, we know he has the talent and the foundation. We have to see how well is he coming out of the Preakness. That was one incredible ride. And Umberto Rispoli, not a top jockey here at Saratoga, but is one with this horse. This horse responds to all of his cues. Sovereignty, top talent, won the Kentucky Derby, skipped the Preakness, so he's had a little bit of rest. The question's going to be his running style. Is he going to be so far off the pace that he can't chase them down? Or is he going to be like a Keen Ice or Birdstone and come from way behind and win Belmont at Saratoga? Now let's look at Baeza. Baeza is really standing out to me. Has the foundation, has the Kentucky Derby, has the right running style, and has a top jockey for Saratoga. Moving on to Grande and Rodriguez. Grande does have 2 races at 1 1/8 and has the right running style, but Rodriguez has the right running style too, a stronger foundation, and also that incredible workout. 7 angles to help you find your Belmont winner. Now it's your turn. Drop me a comment below. Tell me who's your early choice to win the Belmont Stakes. Hit like, hit subscribe. Don't miss out on my next Belmont video. And it doesn't stop there. We're going to cover Saratoga and then start to go through all the Derby preps again. And I'm going to be at Belmont at Saratoga, so if you see me, come up and say hi. I would love to meet you. I hope you all find your winner, but most of all, sashay away with your money. Until next time, cheers.